Hello. As a 45-year-old female, I am writing today to ask for guidance on a matter involving my 19-year-old daughter, Chloe. Given the very convoluted nature of the topic, I will start with some background to help to clarify things. When I was 26, I had Chloe, my daughter, with my then-husband Stan. After graduation from college, Stan and I got married. He belonged to a comfortable, to say the least, business family. His dad raised him alone. His mother died from cancer and had passed while he was little. Mark, my 65-year-old father-in-law, has always treated me like his own daughter and occasionally even defended me before his own family. Things deteriorated between Stan and me after I had Chloe. He hardly stayed at home. We were on the brink of divorcing when Chloe was 3, but Mark put us in marriage counseling and we were able to save it. But things changed drastically and we felt fake, like a phony version of ourselves. Chloe had suffered greatly in the time before the divorce, hence Stan and I resolved to be respectful to one another and ensure our daughter would benefit from our marriage. Chloe grew raised in a house where her parents loved her much but did not love one another. Stan was running his family company, and I was a graphic designer helping the house so Chloe would never experience a day of financial hardship. She turned out to be a good youngster, which helped her to find her way. By the time Chloe was 17, my and Stan's relationship had suffered and he had come clean about his 5-year affair with his secretary. Having spent over 10 years with us, that woman's backstabbing felt like a family betrayal. It caused a lot of conflict in our house as Mark nearly kicked Stan out of Will over his careless actions. That day on, I resolved to break away from Stan and eventually seek for a divorce as I was too exhausted to keep up the front. Chloe didn't say anything, but surely felt the brunt of it because she was the one who had to shift homes every weekend, living mostly with her dad and his side piece. After all, his house was closer to the school. I tried to do whatever I could to make it easy for her, from providing her with the best of everything to making sure I wasn't having fights whenever I saw Stan. By the final year of high school, Chloe had decided to get into the family business, just like her father and grandfather. Mark had secretly told me that he was planning on opening a new company under Chloe's name and handing it over to her after she graduated from college. She worked extremely hard all that school year and was able to get into a decent business school. However, she wasn't able to get any scholarships or financial aid and was expecting us to pay, which I was willing to do as a parent by giving half the tuition, with Stan giving the other half. During this time, Stan's side piece announced her pregnancy. I had started saving up, and after gathering funds from my other savings, I was able to collect the 50%. An incident happened during her final year, which led to us having some distance. As I mentioned, I had paid extra attention to being there for Chloe after mine and Stan's separation. Chloe plays excellent piano and had a talent show for the seniors. It was on a weekday, so both Stan and I had decided to attend. On the day of the event, I got stuck at work due to some reason and called Stan to ask if he was there at Chloe's recital. He told me that he was also with his girlfriend at the hospital because the doctor's visit had taken longer than expected. I thought it was okay because I was there. I panicked at the thought and called Mark to ask if he could go to the recital, but he didn't answer his phone as well. Both Stan and I rushed out of our situations as fast as we could and reached by the end of the show. Chloe had won but had no one from her family there, so we found her heading home on her own. When she saw us, she quietly got in the car, and we tried to ask her about it, to which she replied pretty rudely, which was fair. When I was about to drop her and Stan at his house, she made a remark about how it was okay for him to be late because he was looking after the mother of his child, whereas I prioritized work over my child. I was very hurt by this, but I didn't say anything because I knew this was coming from a place of hurt. I told her I would make it up to her and took her to lunch at her favorite place that weekend, but I don't think things were the same between us after that. After her finals, Flo came to my house for a long vacation as my husband's mistress was pregnant and needed more room. One afternoon at lunch, Flo asked me if I was going to pay for her college so that she could provide me with a detailed list of the expenses. I told her that I was going to pay half the tuition, considering her father was also going to contribute his share. She said that with a new child coming into his family, it was kind of obvious that he wasn't going to pay such a huge amount. I was a little stressed by this and told Flo that I didn't have that kind of money and that it wasn't fair of Stan to practically throw away his first child just because another one was on the way. She replied that she was okay with her dad not being able to pay and had no grudges against him or his girlfriend. She practically begged me to find a way to help her pay, or she would have to get a student loan. I suggested that the loan was a good idea because we actually lacked funds, but she got upset and left. I think she was expecting me to pay for it all instead of having her take a loan. I thought I should give her the space she needed and didn't initiate a conversation with her for the rest of the day. The next whole morning, Flo was missing, so I called her and got to know that she was out with a friend and would be home soon. She came back around lunchtime and was looking very excited when she approached me. I asked her the reason for her happiness, and she proceeded to place this necklace on my table. The necklace she placed was a blue sapphire necklace that belonged to my late mother. We weren't rich or even comfortable back when I was a child, and this pretty expensive necklace, which had been passed down in our family since my great-great-grandma, was considered a lucky charm. I asked Flo where she found the necklace, and she told me it was in the attic with my mom's other stuff. She said she got the necklace checked by a friend and realized it was valued a lot. She continued that now I could pay her college fees in full by selling this necklace. I was taken aback by her statement because this was something passed on to me and had been in my family for generations. It felt weird that my own daughter, who was going to inherit this in the future, wanted me to sell it when it wasn't even necessary. I looked at Chloe and how excited she was, but I decided to break her excitement by telling her that there was no way I was going to sell this family heirloom as it was sentimental. She came up with the argument that it was of no use if it couldn't help her, as she was family, but I very sternly said no to her and wished for no further discussion on this. She got upset and went to her room, and when I went to check on her, she was packing her bags to stay with her dad. I tried to convince her that it wasn't as big of a deal and that we could find a way out, but she straight up said no and left. Chloe's graduation day was approaching, and I obviously was expecting an invite to her school. What I received was an invite for the after-party organized at Stan's house. I thought it must have been a mistake and texted Chloe, but she said that the school allowed only one parent and she was going to take her father, which I very half-heartedly accepted. Later on graduation day, I was hurt by Chloe's Instagram post, in which she had pictures of her graduation ceremony with Stan and his mistress. I decided to just get through with the day and not make it about myself. The graduation party was very normal, like nothing had happened. Mark did come to console me about Chloe not taking me to her graduation ceremony, but I brushed it off as me being sick and unable to attend. When it was time for the speech, Flo took center stage and began thanking everyone. She was going on about how her soon-to-be stepmother was a lucky charm and the reason for her success. She kept going on about Stan and his new family, and I thought I would be mentioned somewhere, but the speech ended with nothing about me. I was heartbroken by this, and Mark could see on my face how dejected I was. He immediately went to Chloe to talk to her and left within a few minutes after what looked like a heated argument from Alfar. Chloe then came to me and asked if we could talk privately, and we both went to her room. I thought she wanted to apologize for everything, but she began screaming and blaming me for ruining her special day because her grandpa Mark had confronted her about not crediting me for her success. When she told him how he shouldn't interfere when he didn't know the whole story, he replied that he did know everything and stormed out. She kept calling me a tattletale for ratting her out to Mark and spoiling her relationship with him. I told her it wasn't me who told him about our conversation, but she wasn't willing to listen and asked me to leave as soon as I could. I was devastated by it all and laughed after getting myself together. Later that night, I got a call from Flo crying, asking me to come to Stan's house as soon as possible. I got a little tense and drove to his house immediately. I went in and saw Stan, his side piece, and Mark sitting on the couch, with Flo standing by the side in tears. I asked what was going on and found out that it was Stan who had called Mark the day Flo went to his house after her fight with me, asking him for either some money for her college or asking him to convince me to pay the full price. Mark got angry at Stan for using me just because he didn't wish to pay for his own daughter and shut him up. Since that day, those two weren't on talking terms, and after Flo didn't take my name and gave a stupid justification for that, Mark was pushed over the edge and told Flo something she didn't wish to hear. But first, he asked me to tell him the truth about what had happened between me and Flo. I told him everything, and he was appalled as I was at the thought of selling a family heirloom. When it wasn't necessary, he then got up and proceeded to berate Flo for treating me like this. He then took out the papers of the company he had planned for Flo, which was going to be her graduation gift. He told Flo about it and went ahead to tear it in front of everyone, saying that he was wrong in his judgment of Flo being a good kid. There was no way he was going to spoil her with a silver spoon anymore. Everyone was shocked at this, and Flo began crying hysterically, begging Mark not to be so harsh with her. Mark then turned to me and asked me not to give Flo the money I had saved for her college, as she needed a reality check after being such an entitled brat, and left without listening to anyone. Flo then began begging me to convince Mark to give her back the future company while Stan and his side piece kept blaming me for causing this mess. Everything was too much to take for me, so I told Flo I would think about it and left to go back to my home. It is now the next morning, and my phone is bombarding me with texts from Stan and Flo, asking me to talk to Mark and make things right. I'm pretty stressed, and I'm thinking of calling Mark for dinner tonight to discuss the issue, but I still don't feel it was my fault. So I eat a hole for not selling my family heirloom for my daughter's college money and maybe ruining her future. Update 1. Hi. First, I would like to answer some questions asked regarding the original post. What could Mark pay for Chloe's education? Even though Mark is a rich person, he still believes that people should work and earn their position, so he wasn't willing to pay for Chloe's education per se, but was fine with giving her the company after she had a degree. Stan wasn't as rich as his dad, but was comfortable, as I mentioned, but he was saving his money for his new child and family. About the relationship between Chloe and her future stepmother, Stan's girlfriend, I don't like Stan's side piece because she had done wrong to me, but she has always been nice and kind to Chloe so far. Chloe didn't like her early on when Stan and I had decided to divorce, but over the last few years, both had bonded over a dysfunctional childhood with separated parents and had developed a mature step-parent-child relationship. I didn't realize how far the extent of their relationship was until now. Coming back to the actual update, so at dinner, I talked to Mark about whatever had gone down, and whether such a huge punishment of him not giving Flo the company, as well as me not paying for her, was fair. Mark made it very clear that there was no way Flo would have appreciated any of it, and it showed in her behavior at the party. He was disappointed because not only was she acting like she deserved it all, but she also didn't even show a tiny bit of intention to make it on her own. He made me realize that I was free to give her the money I had saved for her, but shouldn't expect the same from him, and should not complain in the future, just in case Chloe chose to abandon me for her new family. Mark assured me that it wasn't my fault and left. After he left, I called Chloe and let her know that her grandpa wasn't willing to give her a role in the company unless she made something of herself. She freaked out on hearing this and began cursing me yet again, blaming me for everything that went wrong. Stan had to grab the phone from her to stop her from spiraling out of control. Her behavior on this phone has lately caused me to reconsider paying half of her college. Mark told me the next day that he was once more engaged in a protracted debate with Stan, who was blaming Mark and myself for making Chloe unhappy and treating her so cruelly. Being the audacious man he is, Mark reminded Stan that he could afford his daughter as Velva was the actual desertive in the matter. Mark made sure he remembered he was still employed by the company he led and could be sacked should his careless blame games continue. Stan hardly defended Chloe and shut down really fast after this. Under the pretense of how family should be handled, even his mistress tried to persuade Mark. Instead, Mark asked her to pay for Chloe instead, which she immediately refused to do since she wasn't as well off. After our last conversation, I did try to call Chloe to see if she was all right, but apparently I'd been blacklisted from conversations and on all social media. I therefore find it reasonable that I stop paying for her college now. Second update. The previous update was 1 week ago, hence things have been quiet. Though I still feel bad for not supporting my own daughter's schooling, I came to see that caving into her needs would simply mean supporting her behavior. I am hence still rather caught on not providing financial support for her. This update covers what transpired following. Knowing she would have to take a student loan and most likely wouldn't be involved in the family business, Chloe was in disarray, as was already said. As much as I dislike that chick, I'm glad Chloe has someone for emotional support. Stan's girlfriend has been her rock during all of this. Mark, after a few days, was also pretty bummed about losing his stepdaughter over money and decided life was too short to hold grudges. He still wasn't going to help her financially or in any way, but wanted to have a talk with her to explain what went wrong and how to fix things for the future with him and me. Chloe agreed to meet him, and they met for lunch, but it didn't go as planned. They talked for a while, and things were going smoothly until Mark asked Chloe about why she didn't invite me to her graduation ceremony. Chloe, at this point, in an attempt to persuade her grandpa, made up a whole story about how she had begged me to pay half her tuition and asked about the necklace to make things easy on me. But I instead abused her for being so entitled. She said that after all that, she still invited me to graduation, but I decided to decline the invitation and now was acting like the victim in the situation. Mark is a smart man. He listened to her, but decided to cross-check with me later, which is why I know this story. When Mark asked me about declining the invitation, I broke down, thinking how far Chloe had gone just to berate me. I told him the truth and also showed him the chats, which Chloe must have forgotten about before lying, making it extremely clear that I wasn't invited to her graduation deliberately. Mark was extremely disappointed at this and called Chloe to let her know that they wouldn't be having a relationship from now on until she stopped her habit of being deceitful. I also decided to text her from Mark's number that I wanted to be in no contact with an ungrateful child like her. I did get a few texts from Stan's girlfriend, calling me names for abandoning my own daughter and ruining her relationship with her family, but I simply blocked her because I know she isn't worth my time. Update 3. I didn't think things would escalate to this level, and I would have to write an update this soon. So after Chloe's conversation with Mark, she realized that the only way to get sympathy in this situation was to come up with a false narrative and spread it. So she used her TikTok account and posted a few videos about how I was a toxic mom, manipulating a lot of situations that had happened since her childhood, making me the villain. She also went as far as to say inappropriate things about my relationship with Mark. I am not on social media, so I got wind of the situation from a colleague of mine who was following my daughter. All the limits were crossed at this point, so I decided to inform Mark about it and wrote an email to Stan, his girlfriend, and Chloe stating that if they didn't remove the video as soon as possible, I would sue them for defamation. My colleague assured me that I had nothing to worry about because the post barely had any views. Mark, upon realizing what had gone down, decided to send an email similar to mine to Chloe. Later that evening, I got a call from a distant relative of mine asking me about my situation with Chloe and technically blaming me for not keeping my daughter safe. I asked her how she knew about it, and that's when I got to know that the TikTok had gone viral in our community. I decided to install the app to see what people had been talking about, and my reputation was being torn apart in the comments, with Flo liking the vile ones. My phone and email were also bombarded with hate messages from some people I knew and some random people. I couldn't believe how vile my own child was and decided to sue her and Stan, after all, but not before posting my side of the story. I did post a few videos I made telling my side of the story with proof, and it garnered a lot more attention than I had expected. People on the internet were now siding with me, and because of all the hate being redirected towards her, Flo thought it was best to message me, asking me to sort things out in person and remove the posts. I got angry at her assumption that I was going to follow her command and told her to tell Stan to meet me the next day at his father's office. Mark and I had talked during all of this and decided that we would be suing Chloe and Stan as her guardian for defamation because we had suffered enough and all this negative attention was also affecting Mark's business. The next day, Stan showed up with Chloe at Mark's office. Mark had his lawyer beside him and told Stan and Chloe that they were going to sue them both for defamation. Chloe freaked out at the prospect of actually going to court over her petty videos and immediately deleted the TikToks she had posted in hopes of deleting evidence. But when Mark showed her the screen recordings of the video, she began shedding crocodile tears, asking him not to do this and spoil her future. Stan even tried to guilt-shame me into taking back the case, but I asked him not to interfere now when he didn't stop the fiasco in the first place. Honestly, this has been extremely taxing, and coming from your own child is even more devastating. So I have decided to get off social media for some time now, and will be reading the comments after I'm back from my internet break. Update 4. I am writing this update after a few months, so it's safe to say that this will be the last update because the problem has now been resolved. I would also like to thank everyone who posted in advance in the comments. I'm grateful for the support. So since the last time, a lot went down, especially with Chloe. Since all of this happened right before a long weekend, we decided to file the case the following Monday. On Saturday, I got a call from Mark asking me to come to Stan's house immediately. I rushed there, and what had happened was nothing short of appalling. After we had told both Stan and Chloe about the case, they both came back home and got into a heated argument. This led to Stan's girlfriend's health being affected, and she was rushed to the hospital due to shortness of breath. She and the child were safe, and after the checkup, she came back home. Chloe felt guilty for putting her health at risk, so she tried to apologize to her, but instead got into a very nasty fight with her. Stan's girlfriend asked Chloe to give her some space, but Chloe wanted to hear that her apology was accepted and kept bugging Stan's girlfriend. This led to her obviously being extremely annoyed, and things escalated. Before Stan could intervene, the fight got physical, with Flo pushing Stan's girlfriend in anger. Fortunately, Stan took the fall. Upon realizing what she had done, Flo ran to her room crying. She came down a few hours later and was surprised to see us all sitting there. She knew this was about what she had done and immediately apologized to Stan's girlfriend, stating her behavior was inexcusable. Stan, at this point, spoke and asked Chloe to leave their house as soon as she could because he still thinks that she is a threat to his pregnant partner and unborn child. Chloe was shocked at this and tried to apologize again, only for Stan's girlfriend to let her know that this was the only option they were giving her. Seeing what Chloe had done, she brought this on herself, but I still found it harsh. Mark offered Chloe to stay with him for the time being, which she accepted because she had no other option. After Chloe left to pack her bags, Stan began crying and asked his dad to take back the case we were planning to file. He mentioned that he didn't wish to get into the legal mess at such a crucial point in his life and would like to disassociate from Chloe if that's the cost of his freedom. Well, I tell you, everyone in the room had their jaws touching the floor, and I'm not lying. I understood that Chloe wasn't perfect and, to be fair, wasn't even a decent human at this point. But there was no way Stan was doing anyone any favors by going no contact with one of his children for the sake of another who wasn't even born yet. Both Mark and I looked at each other in shock and expected Stan's girlfriend to say something. All she said was that none of it was their fault, and she agreed with Stan to the fullest. As I mentioned, as cruel as Chloe was, this was still too petty coming from her father. Mark didn't respond to Stan after this and left with Chloe once she came down, and I followed. The next day, I got an apology message from Mark's number. It was Chloe. She said that her grandpa had told her everything about how her dad wanted to disown her and that she realized too late that I was the only parent who solely cared about her. I didn't directly forgive her, but asked her to take care. That evening, I called Mark, and we both came to the conclusion that the defamation case on Chloe right now wasn't a good idea, as she was already going through a lot and clearly needed help. We agreed to let Chloe go on one condition. She promised Mark and myself a public apology on all social media sites, to which she instantly agreed. She'd also said in the post that she was not communicating with Stan or his girlfriend. Stan tried calling Chloe in hopes of apologies for bringing up the possibility of disowning her after he found out the lawsuit had been withdrawn. But Chloe let all her wrath out and told him what was what, from him cheating on me to him deserting me, instead of putting up with him. After that, he had nothing to say on the breakup of the partnership. Chloe had opted to work on everything by herself after taking a student loan. She did drop by my place before heading out and really apologies for whatever had gone on. I wished for distance, to which she consented. I forgave her, but also made it plain that our relationship required more work. Chloe is currently working close to her college and attending therapy for her mental health problems. Though I haven't spoken with her too often, I intend to invite her over holidays. Mark also hardly talks to her, although Stan and his new family seem to be doing. He has told his father he regrets splitting off his